Hello ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, my name is Brad. This is my channel Adamant Orange, and in this video we are going to review another Legends model from Metal Earth. If you haven't seen by the title, we have the Megatron Legends model to review and talk about. And this is the first of the Transformers Legends models that I build, and I've got a few things to say about it. Now, I've built many of the Legends models already. I've built all of the DC and Marvel Legends models when they came out. It took me a little time to get through them, but I built them all. And I made notations. I noticed and talked about during those builds how when they came out with the Guardians of the Galaxy models, they made some changes to the basic design of the structure of those models. All of those models had a basic structure to them and vary in parts with hats or ears or tails or what have you, or shields or swords. But the basic structure for the most part was the same. When they released the Guardians models, they updated the body a little bit, made some what I think were very positive changes to make it easier to fold and shape the parts, and they also changed from a very shiny finish to a more matte finish, a more semi-gloss finish, and it worked out a lot better, I think. And they've released the Looney Tunes models, and they're a very different design because they're a different kind of character, but they've stuck with the matte finish and it's worked very well for those characters. And now we have the Transformers models, which again stick to that matte finish, which works very, very well, or semi-gloss finish that works very well for these models. And they've gone back to the basic design of the Guardians of the Galaxy body and assembly style, except they've improved upon it, and I think they've done a wonderful job of improving upon it. It makes it a more difficult Legends model, but not a terribly challenging one. It's going to be more challenging and more complicated. Really not. I'm not even sure I'd say more challenging. It's more complicated, more detailed than the Guardians models, than the other DC and Marvel models that they've already come out with. It just adds a lot of parts and pieces and details. And if you look here with Megatron, you have the added side piece gun on his arm, but there's also these added shoulder details and these added plates here and there on the side of his hips and side of his legs. There's added plates. It took more time to build, and there's these track things on the back of the arms and the back of the legs that just really adds to the detail. It adds to the complexity of the model, but it really doesn't add that much difficulty to it. It made it take longer, and it made it take more time to put together, but I really, for the most part, I really enjoyed this build. I thought it was going to be kind of quick. It ended up taking an hour and 15 minutes. Some of the original Legends models I could do as quick as 20 minutes. This took a bit longer because you spend a lot more time adding in these extra pieces. But I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think it works wonderfully well, and it takes this simple Legends model and brings it to a whole new level. I'm really surprised and impressed with what I have seen here in this model, and in the amount of detail and parts that have been put into it, and it's not been put in, the extra stuff has not been put into a ridiculous level that makes it overly difficult and overly challenging and no longer any fun. I think this is well done. Now, going back to the same basic body style, I'm referring to the center body and the legs. The legs and the front piece are all one piece now, and they made that change in the Guardians, and you have to kind of fold the tips of the feet up and fold the sides around, and it's a little bit of a process, and it's made more complicated because you've added on several parts to that body, to the side of the legs, before you do that. But it still folds up very much the same. Now, there was one section that kind of threw me for a loop, and if you check out the full build video, you'll see what I'm talking about. But there's a section in the instructions, and I'll show you a picture here in a second. There's a section in the instructions that indicates something folds over, and there's a tab that folds over instead of twist. It's got the blue circle in there. When I first saw that, I didn't know what it was talking about. I didn't understand what was, but I thought it was just the track parts that folded over, and they were just kind of showing the same thing twice. So I started folding the track pieces and getting them shaped, and then I realized there's another piece on the other side that folds in first, and the track pieces fold over on top of it. So that kind of threw me for a loop. And once I looked back at the instructions, it was easy to realize what they were trying to tell me, and I could see that flap, but it was just such a minute detail, and I didn't expect it, and I guess a little bit of overconfidence. Oh, this looks like it comes together just like the Guardians of the Galaxy models, and I'm not going to have a hard time with this. Yes, I'm going to fool myself and actually make it slightly more complicated, because that's what I do. I make these mistakes so that you don't have to. But it really wasn't that big of a hiccup. I just kind of moved the tracks back a little bit out of the way, folded that piece in, and continued on. Didn't cause a big issue. I was a little disappointed at some of the plates that you add onto the sides of the legs had those tabs that are just sticking out from the edge of a piece that you have to carefully bend right at a right angle and not too soft of an angle so that they'll line up. And I was thinking this is going to be difficult to line up, but no, they lined up pretty good, and they're not going to sit completely flat because there's tabs under there holding another part, so it works out just fine. I get really irritated with those tabs because a lot of times when you have a part that just has a couple of tabs on the side with no fold lines, that part is supposed to sit really flat, and that can be very difficult to do sometimes, but not the case with this. It worked out great and got a wonderful model. Now the arm pieces have a lot of bits and sections to them, putting them together, and there's a lot of opportunity to put some of those parts on backwards and create the wrong angle, except that Fascinations or Metal Earth has taken the time to add a third tab into the mix so that those parts will only fit the one way. So if you folded them the right way, they're going to fit the one way. You're going to be forced to put them on the correct way, and everything's going to turn out right, with the exception of the fists. The fists only have one tab on each side. If you get that backwards, well, you're going to kind of see it pretty quick. If not, it's not that hard to fix. But that's the one thing you have to pay attention to. All of this arm pieces, all these pieces of the arm are going to come together the correct way because of that third tab. Just be a little careful with the hand. It should be fine. There's a lot of pieces to this gun barrel, and it's not perfect, but it comes together and works pretty good for this tiny little model. And just like many of the other Legends model, he has kind of a big squarish head, but it works better for the Transformers models than it does for the DC. I mean, it works okay for those, but it fits better. The boxy style really fits better with the Transformers models because they are more of a boxy style character, so it mixes very well with them. Really, I've said it already, but I'll say it again, I'm really impressed with the amount of detail and extra pieces they've managed to easily cram into this thing without overdoing it, without overcomplicating it, and it really adds another layer. And honestly, it almost turns out in some ways better than the larger ones, but no, not really. It just really puts it not that far behind the full-size Transformers models that they came out with several years ago. And I one of the things I remember thinking as I was putting this together, it's a little bit of a complicated model. It's definitely more complicated for a Legends model. If we put it into that category of other Legends model, it's one of the more complicated, detailed ones. Makes it take longer, but it almost puts it on the same level of complexity as the original 4 Star Wars models. When they first came out with, I believe it was R2-D2, Millennium Falcon, Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, and the Et-Et Walker, when they first came out, they weren't that much more complicated than this. I may have that list mixed up a little bit. I'd have to review. It's been a while. But the first 4 they came out with, they weren't that complicated. A little bit more than this, but not that far. As the Star Wars ones have evolved, they've gotten more complicated, more detailed, and that's overall good, but they're taking longer to build. For me, who makes these videos, that makes it take longer for me to make the video, but whatever, it's worth it. It's the extra detail. But these almost kind of go back to the roots of where Metal Earth was starting, where they had a good amount of detail, nice little models that weren't super complicated. That's not me complaining. It's a little bit nostalgic, a little bit of an interesting notation in my mind, but I really like the direction this went, and I'm very much looking forward to building some more of these Transformer Legends models. I was very surprised at the amount of detail and not at all disappointed with how it came together. I'm more excited about building these Transformer models now than when I first got the packaging. And I say that because I do want to thank Metal Earth. This is another model that Metal Earth Fascinations sent me to review. So it was provided by them for me for an honest review. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I do really enjoy these models. I've always tried to support Metal Earth and the stuff that they come out with rather than buying knockoff stuff. Metal Earth has a copy. they really haven't disappointed in their quality. The metal tends to be better than a lot of the copycats and knockoffs, and they really stand behind their product, whereas a lot of the knockoffs just aren't going to stand behind their product. Many times I've been able to get replacement parts for these models if something didn't come out the way it should have, and they've really stood behind their products in that fashion. So very happy to do a review of these models, and thank you very much, Fascinations Metal Earth, for sending this model to review. There's more to come. I'll leave it at that. As always, thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Thank you, Metal Earth, for sending me this model to review, and thank you to my Patreon supporters for giving me the financial freedom to make the news videos and the build videos that I do. If you enjoy these videos, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. There's a link in the description down below, and here in just a second at the very end of this video. Thank you for watching, and keep on keeping on.